Hi, I'm Joel, former Navy SEAL and former BUDS instructor. I think this will probably save a lot of lives in the next crisis. There are lots of bug out guys out there, but until today, you couldn't find a single one for bugging in. Which is crazy if you think about it, because for almost any crisis, bugging in makes the most sense. As a Navy SEAL, I am highly trained to survive in the wild and other hostile environments. Very few people are better at bugging out than a Navy SEAL. But even so, I would never do it unless I had no other choice. Except for a few select cases, like a raging wildfire or tornado barreling straight for your house, bugging out is a very bad idea. Why would you ever want to leave your amazing home, where you probably have a half-full fridge, maybe some cans, a warm bed, a roof over your head, as well as neighbors you know and terrain you're familiar with, only to run out there to some place you know nothing about to try to forage for your daily meals, and maybe get 5 calories for some roots after spending 6 calories digging them up? In this short presentation, I'll reveal 3 bug-in survival secrets we're taught in the SEAL teams that every other person in America should discover before it's too late and the next crisis is already here. They have immense power, and just using the first 2 will probably put you far ahead of the pack. But it's the third and final one that will make such a huge difference to your preparedness plan that it will turn your house into the safest place on earth. By the end of this video, you'll also have discovered dozens of other ingenious things, like 39 of the cheapest and most nutritious survival foods you should stockpile before they're gone, how to stockpile a ton of water for a year, the best canned foods under $1 to buy at the supermarket, what vital items disappeared immediately after Hurricane Harvey that you should get your hands on now, why you should always keep a silver coin in your freezer, the life-saving pills the government doesn't want you to have, how to legally outfox FEMA, and what to do immediately once martial law is declared in your area, just to name a few. As I said, I'm Joel Lambert. After earning my Trident, I proudly served my country overseas. As a SEAL, I was dropped deep behind enemy lines on some of the most dangerous missions you can imagine. It was a SEAL team that took out Osama bin Laden at his highly secure compound in Pakistan 10 years after the horror of 9/11. But there are many other missions just as important that you'll never hear about on TV. We lost friends along the way, but many others come back safely because of the unique skills and knowledge we gathered over the years. And I'm sure this knowledge may save your life as well in the next crisis. One of the most important things you must realize right now, before it's too late, is the worst thing you can do is wait. I've heard a lot of fear-mongering lately. You probably have too. Every talking head on TV claims to know how, and sometimes even when, the next crisis will cripple America. Truth is, nobody can predict the future. But what I can tell you for sure is the world is once again splitting in two, and the peace and security we've enjoyed for decades is coming to an end. We are living in very dangerous times. While the foreign wars are draining our coffers, the hate between our people, between different ideologies and political opinions is reaching a boiling point. As enemies gather at the gates, we've never been more divided within. The Bible clearly says in Matthew 12:25, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand." We've never been more vulnerable, not only as a nation, but also as individuals. How many of us today have the skills or the stockpiles of previous generations? We rely solely on supermarkets instead of a fully stocked year-round pantry. We are all dependent on refrigeration instead of a backyard root cellar that doesn't need electricity. And almost nobody has an alternative to the tap once it runs dry, unlike our forefathers who had their hand pumps in their wells. People were a lot more self-reliant back then, while now a lot of us expect the government to save our families in the next crisis. And look, I can't really blame them. After all, the government did provide financial assistance back in 2008, and then again recently with the pandemic stimulus checks. But as bad as these events were for some, they were not a collapse. So let me tell you the harsh truth nobody else will. In a really bad crisis, like after an EMP strike or a devastating economic depression, it's everyone for themselves, including the government. There is no help coming from anyone but you. Nobody will lift a finger for your family simply because they'll have theirs to worry about first. That's why waiting for outside help of any kind is not just a bad idea, but a potentially fatal mistake. I don't want anyone to have to watch helplessly as their spouse or their child becomes skin and bones and withers away. Not doing anything to prepare right now while we're still living in good times means risking everything you hold dear once hard times come along. Thankfully, some people understand this and have begun putting away what they can for the hard times ahead. Unfortunately, many others still choose to put their faith in bug-out bags and running to the woods, thinking they can survive there till the crisis is over. That brings me to the second thing I want to share with you today. You can't really outrun a crisis. If you ever thought you could just live off the land until things go back to normal, please listen carefully. You cannot run away from an economic collapse, an EMP, a pandemic, a civil war, and many other crises bigger than a local natural disaster. None of these will take days, but months or most likely years. Do you think you can make it that long in the wild? Just take a look at the men and women who compete on Alone, the top experts of long-term wilderness survival. If you haven't watched it, this is a very real show where contestants have to live off the land on their own with a sort of bug-out bag for as long as possible. Most of them quit in the first 2 to 3 weeks. The winners are usually decided before 2 months are up, and the most anyone has ever lasted on Alone was Roland Welker, the so-called 100-day king. Here are some before and afters of other survival experts on the show. This is Carly Fairchild, the runner-up on season 3 of Alone, day 1 versus day 86. She had to stop after losing almost 30% of her body weight. If she had continued, she probably would have died of starvation. Here's another contestant, Dave Nessia. They pulled this guy out on day 73 because he had an actual risk of organ failure. Coulter Barnes on day 1 and day 67. This man lost no less than 86 pounds. It's so hard to get what you need to survive out there. It's just a brutal, brutal experience that will make even the experts look like Auschwitz prisoners after a few weeks. This is what living off the land really looks like. The truth is that except for a few select cases, bugging out doesn't make much sense. The only people that recommend it are the ones that haven't gone through it. Those who have, like me, would never choose to do it. When I was deployed in Afghanistan with my SEAL team, we used to run reconnaissance missions pretty regularly, and I can tell you that I felt a knot in the pit of my stomach each and every time I left through those gates. I knew what was waiting for us out there. Every trip could be our last. I remember thinking that the cook inside the mess hall was safer than any of us, with all our skills and guns, the minute we stepped outside. I think it was that experience that made me realize I want to have everything I need to survive in my own home. My advice is simple. Don't bug out. It's much better to stay put and turn your house into the safest place on earth. Now, I want you to think of your home as your base in the next crisis, because that's exactly what it will become as the whole neighborhood turns into hostile territory where looters roam unchecked. There's nothing like a disaster to make them come out of the woodwork. They'll steal whatever they can, but even if you still have law and order left in your area, you need to realize something. Food, medicine, generators, fuel, all those things and many more will vanish in a short time after, or even before a disaster strikes. Not because they will all get stolen, but because people will buy them in a massive panic. Just look what your local supermarket looks like immediately after a hurricane. You couldn't find canned foods, seeds, toilet paper, sometimes not even bottled water, and other vital items no matter the price. People will hoard just about anything when danger is near, even stuff they don't need. And if they can trample each other and pepper spray folks over flat screen TVs on Black Friday or toilet paper several years ago, I don't want to find out what they're capable of once all the food has run out. Look, unless you want to fight tooth and nail with someone twice your size for the last can on the shelf or that pack of antibiotics, you'd better build your stockpile before the next crisis, because once it's here, it will be too late. So this is not only the best time, but it may be the only one you have left to prepare for what's coming our way. There are a lot of experts out there that can show you how, no doubt about that. But I can tell that most of these guys are just preaching from the couch, and that's not the kind of advice you want to rely on when things go south. As hard as I looked, I could not find a practical, down-to-earth book on how to outlast a long-term crisis without leaving your home. A guide that will give you a long-lasting food stockpile, a year's worth of water reserves, the crisis medicines you need, the perimeter defense tactics that will keep looters at bay, the only survival items that are worth paying for, blackout communication devices, and many other skills and items that you need to shelter in place with your loved ones for as long as you need, even years. Nobody has ever written a book like this, so I finally decided to write it myself, as I knew that my decades of experience as a Navy SEAL would help a lot of people protect their own families during the hard times ahead. I wanted to cut straight through the useless and often dangerous advice promoted by people that have no business teaching this stuff. I wanted to give you the only nuggets of survival gold that I know you'll really need once it hits the fan. Things that I've tested over the years and can vouch for in any survival situation. Things that I trust my own family's lives with. The book is called A Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide: How to Turn Your House into the Safest Place on Earth. It's in a physical format, so you'll be able to rely on it even in a blackout when ebooks and other digital materials will become useless. When you boil it down, there are only 10 things you need to have ready or know beforehand. That's why this guide has 10 parts, and here's what you'll find in each of them. First, we'll cover food reserves. Fortunately for us, we were born in times of plenty, and none of us have experienced anything even close to a real famine. But let me tell you something. There is no limit to the things you will do when you haven't eaten in a few weeks. That's when people start to eat other people. The truth is, It's become so easy and so cheap to build a long-lasting food stockpile now that it's crazy so few people have one. Most Americans will be caught with their pants down in the next crisis, relying only on what they have left in their fridge. Inside this book, you will discover exactly how to build, little by little, a long-lasting stockpile that will last 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. You'll see exactly what foods to buy and where, so they're as affordable as possible. I'm also going to give you a day-by-day and meal-by-meal rationing plan made with the help of a qualified nutritionist to make sure you are not only getting 2,200 calories a day, but also the vital proteins, fats, and other nutrients that will keep you healthy. If you don't already know this, the most survival foods sold in buckets are usually very expensive, low in calories, poor in nutrients, and bland in taste. Unlike most survival experts, I've bought, stored, tested, and lived off the foods you'll discover inside a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide. I don't stockpile anything I don't eat, and I don't eat anything I don't like. I promise you, these foods taste so good that it will never cross your mind that you're eating for survival. Here are some other interesting things you'll discover in the food chapter. The under $1 supermarket cans you absolutely need to add to your food reserves. A meal in a jar that can feed you for a week. How to make the ultimate survival food with a 25-year shelf life. Must-have survival foods you didn't know existed. The only seeds you need to stockpile for a crisis. How to preserve eggs without electricity for years. What item you should remove from your pantry immediately. And what Great Depression foods we'll be eating again soon, just to name a few. In the next crisis, the thing that will probably force most people to flee the safety of their homes is not a lack of food, but a lack of clean, safe drinking water. It's very easy to underestimate how much you need, and having enough water not only to drink, but also cook and bathe with requires some out-of-the-box solutions. You'll find everything inside a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide, but here's just one of them. You can put this water storage kit inside your bathtub and turn on the tap. Before you know it, you'll have over 100 gallons of fresh water safely gathered there. If there is a blackout or an EMP that stops the big water pumps we all depend on, there will still be some water left in the pipes that you can quickly grab for yourself with this ingenious device, which keeps it from spoiling for a long time. You can also save a lot of water with a special fabric we've come to depend on running covert missions deep behind enemy lines. I'll also show you some other things like the deadly water mistakes to avoid at all costs, how to stockpile a ton of water for 365 days, a simple and cheap device that can filter huge quantities of drinking water, and why bleach is not the best for purifying water and what to use instead, how to harvest atmospheric water when there's none around, and why you should place a silver coin in a blue barrel, how to test your water to see if it's still safe to drink, and how to desalinize water using a device that costs only $4. In the third chapter, I'll show you everything you need to know to protect your home against looters and other intruders using tactics largely unknown to the civilian population. If these tactics helped us in wars against highly trained soldiers and terrorists, you can bet they'll work against your average disorganized looters. I've laid out everything I know you should do from the property line all the way to your bedroom to protect yourself and what you have. For example, you'll not only discover how to make your house look extremely unappealing or dangerous to looters, but also how to set up traps and alarms that will ensure you don't become their next victim. Have you ever wondered how attractive your house is to looters? The houses targeted by them are not the poshest or the biggest ones or the least defended. In fact, looters are usually looking for just 7 things when they decide to break in or move on. If your house checks off more than 2 or 3 of them, it's probably a looter magnet, especially in times of crisis. Let me tell you about a few other things you'll discover in the home defense chapter. How to safely clear your house room to room when you think there's an intruder. How to make your house invisible in a crisis. Ingenious, violence-free ways to keep looters off your property. The most common security mistakes you need to avoid. What to say if neighbors or friends come asking for food in a crisis. Signs to avoid on your property. How to silence a conventional generator so it doesn't draw unwanted attention. What hiding places looters never check. The first thing you should do if martial law is declared. SEAL home survival tactics for the next Civil War, and many other security tips that may just save your life one day. Next up is energy, and this one is really important. This is where you'll learn about the ingenious strategies and items that will keep you alive in a world without electricity. We are so used to having electricity all the time and everything that comes with it that I suspect most people will be totally paralyzed once the grid goes down due to an EMP strike or something similar. But unlike civilians, in the military, we're actively prepared for such scenarios. Here are some other things I've saved for you inside this chapter. A breakthrough solar survival generator anyone can afford that can power an average American house for 3 days straight. An inexpensive device to insulate doors and windows to prevent heat loss. The first thing you should do in a blackout. The best fully rechargeable batteries for flashlights, drills, and other electric tools. Ingenious ways to hide that you still have power in a blackout. How to draw electricity from dead batteries. Powerless items to stockpile for the next blackout. An out-of-the-box way to EMP-proof your generator, car, and other vital appliances, and many, many more. I will also teach you how to communicate in a blackout or after an electromagnetic pulse that takes down the satellites. In the SEALs, we don't just rely on conventional methods of communication, as that would make us very vulnerable. I'll show you some things that we use instead and that you can use as well in the next crisis. On top of that, you'll be able to pass and receive untraceable messages and talk without anyone being able to pinpoint your exact location. Don't worry, this special gear is not expensive or hard to get, and I'll be there to guide you at every step. Here are some other things you'll find in this chapter. How to communicate like a SEAL, the best ham radio for preppers and how to operate it. A simple homemade antenna that can greatly amplify radio signals. How to turn a CB radio into an effective two-way communication device with a 50+ mile range. How to gather intel without being detected. The cheapest way to buy emergency radios in America. Off-grid appliances everyone should have in their house. How to use a car battery to power up your radios, and many others. In Chapter 6, you'll learn all about the medicines and medical supplies you need by your side in the next crisis. As pharmacies will be among the first to get looted, make sure you get everything you need before it's too late. After studying major disasters throughout history, I've realized that it's most often disease and not famine or bullets that claims the most lives. Without the right medicines, even a simple flu or a tiny cut may prove deadly. This life-saving information was put together with the help of a combat medic with extensive in-field experience. Besides conventional pills to stockpile, he'll also share the best natural alternatives for each one. Here are some other things you'll find in this chapter on home medicine. The 10-cent pill everyone needs in their cabinet. How to stop bleeding with cayenne pepper. How you can stockpile prescription meds without a prescription. And what happens if you take expired medications. Nature's amoxicillin and dozens of other backyard plants that can save you once pharmacies run dry. How to make a black drawing salve. Only 4 antibiotics you need to stockpile for hitting the fan. Vital medical supplies to keep in your house. What happens if you mix raw honey with activated charcoal? The powerful painkiller that probably grows in your driveway, and many other things that may just save your life one day. This next part will reveal the survival tools and gear you really need for a long bug-in. You'll never learn about them on TV or by watching random YouTube survival videos. There are so many bad deals and useless items out there that you have a better chance of finding a needle in a haystack. I will help you burn the hay down to find out what you really need. Here are some other things you'll find. Household items you need to stock up on before the upcoming Great Depression. The do-it-yourself EMP Survival Home Kit. What to hunt for at Amish, Army Surplus, and Salvation Army stores. Essential emergency supplies you should have at home. What you probably forgot to buy at the dollar store, and should. A simple plug-in gadget that can shelter everything in your house from the effects of an EMP. What items vanished immediately after Hurricane Katrina was announced. You need to get them in advance. And a lot more items that will greatly help you in the dark days ahead. Next up is survival knowledge. Right now you have access to the internet. It's easy to search for something online and see how it's done. Of course, this all stops when the electricity goes away. That's why I want you to have the skills you need in a physical book, not a hard disk, a phone, a laptop, or other electronic means of storage that along with the internet will be totally unreliable in a crisis. Some things you'll find here are deadly bug-in mistakes you're probably making right now. 10 things that will become extremely valuable after an EMP. Where to take shelter in case of a nuclear strike. The most important thing you should stop doing if you plan on bugging in. Why you should bury a trash can in your backyard. The first thing you need to do in a civil war. Preserving food without a fridge. What to do if they find out you have a stockpile. The only 4 knots you need for survival. Things you throw away that you should add to your stockpile instead. And many others that will come in handy during dark times. No matter how prepared you may think you are and how big of a stockpile you've been able to get, your biggest threat will always be other people. Even if you bug in for months or years, at some point you will eventually have to deal with others. You need to know how to handle them, not only by use of brute force or guns, but also through cunning, deception, subterfuge, manipulation, and every other psychological trick out there. In the SEAL teams, we take this very seriously. And always remember, loose lips sink ships. Never ever tell anyone what you have. Here are some other things you'll discover. How to become untraceable when shit hits the fan. How to tell when people are lying to you in a crisis. Ingenious ways to outfox FEMA in the next crisis. How to stay completely off the government's radar. how to know if your neighbor will become a looter in the next crisis, an ingenious way to stop your phone from tracking you, your rights under martial law, a foolproof operational security plan, how to hide from thermal vision, and many other hacks that will keep you off all radars. And then there's the final piece of the pie. I'm talking about the do-it-yourself projects you need to build around your property to outlast any long-term societal collapse. These are not required if things go back to normal in a few weeks or even a few months, as long as you follow the rest of this guide. But there is no doubt that they'll make you more self-sufficient today, as well as help you survive in the long run. You can find their complete blueprints with pictures and step-by-step guidance saved in the final chapter of a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide. If you have this book by your side, you can build them anytime you want. Here are just some of the survival projects you'll find inside. How to build an electricity-free refrigerator, a pressurized rainwater collection system, the year-round greenhouse, a backyard root cellar, the no electricity coil water heater, the poor man's Faraday cage, how to make any truck EMP-proof, and a lot of others that will make bugging in much easier. So there you have it, the 10 things you need to turn your home into the safest place on Earth. A Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide is really unlike any other prepping or survival book out there. First of all, the knowledge saved inside doesn't come from internet research. It comes from my practical experience as a SEAL doing all of these things for decades to protect my team, my family, and my home. I've made my fair share of mistakes along the way, so you don't have to. I've also found shortcuts and improved many things that will probably help you out a great deal. Secondly, I designed this book to cover all the important aspects of surviving a crisis without ever leaving your home. If you plan to bug in during a crisis, this is the guide you want to have in your home. If you decide to put a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide on your shelf today, you'll also receive 2 exclusive bonuses worth $29 each, completely free. These are only available on a first-come, first-served basis. The first one is called How to Become Self-Sufficient on 4 Acres. People back in the day were a lot more self-sufficient than we are now. They would grow and preserve their own food and medicine, dig backyard wells and build root cellars, raise livestock, and do many other things on their own, which we've all but forgotten in our world of plenty. The second bonus you'll get is called How to Outlive an EMP the Early Pioneer Way. This day-to-day guide shows you what to do after an EMP every day for 30 days. Think about it this way. If an EMP had struck in the late 1800s, nobody would have even noticed it. Our great-great-grandparents didn't even know what an EMP was, nor did they know what modern technology was, but they surely lived, survived, and prospered without it. These 2 free bonuses are only available if you get a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide today. As I said, you can purchase them separately for $29 each, but today you get them both for free. Let me ask you something. How much is keeping your family safe worth to you? For me, personally, that's worth everything. I'm not going to cut corners now and risk losing my loved ones in the next crisis. I've tried to price a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide as fairly as possible so that anyone can afford it. Money is not my reason why. This is a book that will save many lives during the dark times ahead. So as someone who took an oath to take care of others, it's my duty to make sure it ends up in as many hands as possible. The problem is that we don't print in huge quantities like a big publishing house, which gets a huge wholesale discount. This is not a commercial book and probably never will be. All I wanted was to get a price that helped me cover my printing and other expenses, like paying for a nutritionist, a medic, and a few other experts who've also contributed to this unique Bug-In Guide. I think that all things considered, $59 is not a bad price for the life-saving information found inside. Luckily, I found a printing house near Austin, Texas, whose owner is a prepper. He loved the book so much he helped me with a big printing discount like I was some big publisher. This way I was able to get the price down to just $37 each for the current batch. It won't stay this low forever. But for right now, this one-time payment, you can receive a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide, How to Turn Your Home into the Safest Place on Earth, How to Become Self-Sufficient on 4 Acres, plus How to Outlive an EMP the Early Pioneer Way. To secure this special offer, just click on the button below now, and I'll make sure you receive everything as fast as possible. A Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide comes with a 2-month keep the book money-back guarantee. That means you have a full 60 days to read and apply everything inside. I'm sure you'll love it. But if at any time during those 60 days you don't feel completely satisfied with the information you discover inside, send me a quick email or message and I will gladly refund you the price of the book. I'll never even ask you why. And you can choose to keep the physical book and the 2 bonuses, even if I refund your $37. That's how much I believe in this guide and its power to save lives. The way I see it, you've got a few options in front of you right now. The most obvious and the easiest one is to get a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide, receive the 2 free bonuses, and let the knowledge I've saved help you turn turn your house into the safest place on earth, a personal, self-sufficient fortress that will protect you and your whole family no matter what happens, a place you'll never have to leave unless you want to. You could also try to research everything inside the book on your own. I don't want to burst your bubble here, but that will take a lot of time and also money. I can tell you that from personal experience. Plus, there's a big chunk of this information that you're never going to be able to uncover on your own unless you're willing and able to join the SEAL teams. Most recruits fail, and some even die trying to pass through buds. The last and probably worst thing you could do is nothing. I and the other people with insider knowledge know that a very big crisis is practically inevitable at this point. Something evil this way comes. And while I can't give you an exact date or know what shape it will take, I can guarantee that once it's underway or even near, people will panic. They'll swarm the supermarkets, pharmacies, and hardware stores, and the items you really need won't be there anymore. And this book, while still helpful, won't be nearly as life-saving as it would have been had you bought it today. I can tell you what option I'd choose and what many people I trust would also choose in a heartbeat, but the decision is of course ultimately yours. I'm also sure that just like shelves empty in stores on the very first day of a crisis, this guide will be sold out on the very first day of a crisis, so I advise you to get it now. Let me just remind you of what a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide can do for you and your family. As I said, unless a fire or tornado is heading straight for your home and you need to evacuate in a hurry, a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide will help you prepare for any kind of crisis, including the most severe ones, like an EMP, a civil war, or full-blown economic meltdown where millions find themselves on the streets. Having it by your side is the best life insurance policy you can buy for your family. Even though problems are piling up, our society is still functioning right now, so there is still time to follow the advice inside the book and cover all your bases in terms of food, water, communication, security, and all the rest. Don't wait until it's too late, as many of the survival items and supplies you'll find in the book will become impossible to get in a crisis. One of the most important steps you can take to prepare for a disaster, whatever it will be, is to become more self-sufficient, just like our grandparents were. Part of it is stockpiling all the right stuff, but just as important are the skills and methods you need to survive with no outside help. I'm talking about how to grow and preserve your own food, gather rainwater, make powerful natural remedies, and many others. This book will also show you how to build the small do-it-yourself projects you need in your backyard and around the house to lead a more self-reliant life and not owe anybody a thing. It's no secret that people in developed countries like America waste a lot of money every year buying stuff they don't really need. Preparedness is no exception. A Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide will help you cut through the fog of disingenuous advertising and help you stop wasting your hard-earned money on bogus products and bad advice. It will also give you the survival items and knowledge that will make a huge difference when things go south. These are not expensive, but you need to know about them. And the problem is most people, and I'd reckon even most experts, have absolutely no clue. For example, just buying the right kind of backup generator, which you'll discover inside the book in the energy chapter, can save you over $1,000. Depending on how large of a stockpile you want to build and which items you want to get, the savings can go up to multiple thousands of dollars over time. Not to mention that learning how to grow your own food and medicine and how to do other things yourself will add even more savings on top of that. But don't take my word for it. See for yourself by comparing your regular sources with the ones I'm listing inside the book. I'm sure you'll be shocked by the difference. And if you do build the projects, just scribble down how much you save on your monthly utility bills from now on. You'll probably realize the book pays for itself really quickly, and then it will continue to pay you money month after month and year after year. I can tell you from experience, it's very satisfying to watch bills go down instead of up over time. With the simple methods all revealed inside the book, you can turn your house into an almost invisible crisis fortress for you and your loved ones. Just as there is an art of human camouflage, there are also ways to make a home vanish in plain sight. I'll show you what you need to do immediately once a crisis begins to drastically cut down the chances your house will ever become a target for looters, rioters, or unwelcome government officials. They could be looking right at it but never once think to dare to enter your property. And if somehow they do decide to risk it, they'll regret it dearly once they run into the traps, snares, and tripwires you've placed there. With this book, you'll never again toss and turn at night while worrying about a break-in. The simple do-it-yourself traps and systems you'll have in place will make sure of that. Any intruder will be dealt with swiftly without even waking you up most of the time. It will be you who controls your own security, and you won't have to depend on increasingly gutted and unsupported first responders. Look, we all know the truth. Even in the absence of a crisis, our cities are becoming more and more dangerous, with drugs and gangs taking over entire neighborhoods. Sometimes the police won't even go in because it's so dangerous, but even if you're in a good part of town, home security should be a top priority. Home invasions are becoming more and more common, and I'll show you exactly how a seal protects their home from intruders. This book contains timeless survival information that will probably be as relevant for your grandkids or great-grandkids as it is for you today. You can be sure that if you leave them a copy of a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide, it will also help them in their hour of need, long after you won't be able to anymore. Not only will they be very grateful, but in a way, you'll be making sure you do everything in your power to make sure your bloodline and your legacy lives on. I could go on and on here because there are so many other benefits attached to having this Bug-In Guide on your shelf, but I think by now I've given you more than enough to decide for yourself. Again, for a limited time, you can get a Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide and 2 bonuses for the special price of just $37. You're fully covered by a 2-month guarantee, and you can keep everything even if you want your money back at any point during the next 60 days. Whatever you decide, I want to thank you for staying with me until the end, and I hope you've learned a little something that will make your preparedness a little easier from now on. God bless.